everyone thought it was going to be Shapiro. It turned out not to be Shapiro. I have very little doubt that it was, not for the reason we're talking about. It was because of the fact that he's Jewish.
I mean, it's one of the most, one of the dumbest and most dangerous lies that we've heard from the Republicans in recent days. Obviously, the call went out on whatever right-wing WhatsApp group, because they're all doing it. Look at the Republican Party record. Vance is saying this is anti-Semitic. The guy is running alongside Donald Trump, the most openly anti-Semitic presidential candidate we've seen in our lifetimes. You don't think there was a Holocaust denier in Donald Trump's home less than 2 years ago?
Sure, there absolutely was, and that person's an idiot. I'll be the first to tell you that. But what we're talking about right now
Donald Trump's an idiot first.
No, the person who...
That's not what I asked. Why was he in Donald Trump's home in Mar-a-Lago?
He invites a lot of non-traditional media folks, people. That guy owns a podcast, or he does a...
After Vice President Harris chose Minnesota Governor Tim Walz to be her running mate instead of Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro, Donald Trump and MAGA Republicans have been out in force, publicly claiming that the reason for that decision is that the vice president is anti-Semitic, which led to, among other things, progressive commentator Mehdi Hasan publicly and brutally shutting them down to the face of a MAGA Republican on a very heated CNN panel. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, friends, we have several clips to talk about in this video, but yes, as a reminder, yesterday, Vice President Harris formally selected Minnesota Governor Tim Walz to be her vice presidential running mate in the upcoming election. And the final choice was apparently down to Walz and Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro, who is Jewish. Now, again, basically everybody on the right is now openly speculating that the vice president is somehow Jewish, even though her husband is Jewish as well. None of it really makes much sense. But for context, this is what convicted felon Donald Trump had to say on Fox News just this morning.
I think that any Jewish person who votes for a Democrat, or in this case, these people, but who votes for a Democrat, should have their head examined. They are so bad. If you look, they are so bad to Jewish people, what they've done and the way they talk and their policy and everything else, far beyond just what happened, because everyone thought it was going to be Shapiro. It turned out not to be Shapiro. I have very little doubt that it was, not for the reason we're talking about. It was because of the fact that he's Jewish, and they think they're going to offend.
So, according to Donald Trump, the reason that Josh Shapiro wasn't selected is because Shapiro is Jewish. That's the notion, right? And again, MAGA Republicans are everywhere. They are dispersed on right-wing media, on mainstream legacy media, including CNN, casting aspersions to that effect. Unfortunately, for one such MAGA Republican correspondent on CNN, he happened to be sitting on a panel with Mehdi Hasan, a founder of Zateo News and progressive commentator. And we're going to play this entire clip. It's about 4 minutes long. It is brutal. Hasan is in peak form here. He just shuts this nonsense down. I'll see you on the other side and we'll unpack it together.
But I want to ask you, Mehdi, because as you pointed out, governing, the decision that she made is also being used to criticize her and her viewpoints in the Democratic Party. They're talking less from the Republican side about Tim Walz and more about the decision not to choose Josh Shapiro as the governor. And the word anti-Semitism is coming up as some basis to substantiate that criticism. What's your reaction?
I mean, it's one of the most, one of the dumbest and most dangerous lies that we've heard from the Republicans in recent days. Obviously, the call went out on whatever right-wing WhatsApp group, because they're all doing it. Ari Fleischer, Newt Gingrich, they've all been, Nikki Haley, Ted Cruz, they've all been piling in, but it's anti-Semitic. I think Eric Erickson said today, there's no Jews at the top of the Democratic Party allowed, to which Chuck Schumer responded, news to me. And it's not just the Senate Majority Leader who is Jewish Democrat, by the way. All 10 Jewish senators in the United States Senate are Democrats. 24 of the 27 House members who are Jewish are Democrats. All 4 governors in America who are Jewish are Democrats. The Secretary of State, the Treasury Secretary, the Attorney General, the Homeland Security Secretary, and the Second Gentleman are all Jewish Democrats.
So I do think it's important, before we go on, to point this out. It's so good that Mehdi Hasan has the facts on his side. The fact of the matter is that not only do Jewish Americans overwhelmingly vote for Democrats, to the extent that there are Jewish politicians in the United States, the vast, vast, vast majority of them are Democrats, not Republicans. That is an incredibly important point to keep in your back pocket when you're confronted by this.
So it's a nonsense lie. That's the Democratic Party's record. Look at the Republican Party record. Vance is saying this is anti-Semitic. The guy is running alongside Donald Trump, the most openly anti-Semitic presidential candidate we've seen in our lifetimes. This is a guy who hosted a Holocaust denier for dinner at his home less than 2 years ago, who says American Jews are disloyal to Israel, constantly says that, who famously praised Nazis, saying, Jews will not replace us as very fine people, who last week was on a radio show where he agreed with the host calling Doug Emhoff a crappy Jew. Today he called Adam Schiff Shifty Schiff. So Republicans really need to sit this one out. I mean, Vance himself has defended Marjorie Taylor Greene, she of Jewish space lasers fame. So the idea that they want to make this an issue, good luck to them.
Brian, what is your reaction to that? Because obviously Trump has come back to say that he is not anti-Semitic, that this is something, and that he'll point to his daughter, obviously his son-in-law as well, but one example of his love for them. What's your reaction to how this is playing politically?
You know, listen, I think the Republicans have sort of stepped back and watched the Democrats eat each other up with, what did the Democrats call him? Genocide Josh. You know, that wasn't a Republican term that came up. That was a Democratic term. A Democrat came up with that term to describe Josh Shapiro, a Jewish Democratic governor. So we're watching this debate take place. We're seeing them rip each other apart based on, you know, whether you can be pro-Israel or anti-Palestine or however the situation works out. But it's not the Republicans that are sort of pushing that. Genocide Josh came from the Democratic Party, from a Democrat operative to try to slander, to try to slur Josh so he would be sort of disqualified of Kamala Harris. That wasn't a Republican thing. That's where the Democratic Party is now. You can look at the colleges' campuses where it was primarily Democratic young activists that were very much anti-Israel. They were saying, you know, we don't care that you were attacked. Well, I was just saying, you don't care that you were attacked. You don't care that there's still American hostages in Israel that are being held against their will. You know, and they were protesting. This is coming from within the Democratic Party. So to try to play it off as a Republican thing is just disingenuous.
You don't think there was a Holocaust denier in Donald Trump's home less than 2 years ago?
Sure, there absolutely was, and that person's an idiot. I'll be the first to tell you that. But what we're talking about right now,
Donald Trump's an idiot first.
No, the person who's this Holocaust denier, he's an idiot.
That's not what I asked. Why was he in Donald Trump's home in Mar-a-Lago?
You know, he invites a lot of non-traditional media people. That guy owns a podcast, or he does a podcast, is my understanding.
It was Kanye and Fuentes, both Holocaust deniers.
Like I said, he goes to a lot of non-traditional media podcasts and has these conversations. I wouldn't do it, but that's what the campaign has made the decision. It's clearly worked. Remember, we got to the first debate with Joe Biden and Donald Trump. Joe Biden dropped out. He demanded the debate because he was behind, because of these Holocaust deniers, all these things. The language wasn't working. He needed a Hail Mary, and the Hail Mary failed. So all these things that are...
Yeah, I don't know. So again, I don't know if you saw that, but the person speaking was the 2016 Trump campaign's communications director. I don't know what the hell he's talking about when he's saying that the reason that President Biden was trying to force the debate was because of anti-Semitism. He was trying to establish a link between the number of debates and the date and times of debates and anti-Semitism in the Democratic Party. Now, to be clear, is there anti-Semitism in the Democratic Party? There's anti-Semitism everywhere, right? It is a pervasive bigotry, which can manifest itself in basically any political corner. But to Mehdi Hasan's point, in terms of the representation of Jewish Americans, the Democratic Party has just been the more reliable party. There are, again, Jewish Americans tend to overwhelmingly vote for Democrats. And again, to the extent that there are Jewish politicians, they are overwhelmingly Democratic as well. It seems there's an absence, there is a gaping maw for Jewish politicians in the Republican Party. So why does the Republican Party, on what basis does the Republican Party want to claim itself, you know, the party without anti-Semitism or the least anti-Semitic party? Note also Mehdi Hasan's face when the communications director said, you know, he deals with a lot of non-traditional media. Mehdi Hasan's like, non-traditional media? That's a new one. Right, this idea that having dinner with Nick Fuentes and Kanye West, who are two, you know, avowed, outspoken, perhaps the two of the most famous anti-Semites in America, that's permissible. Imagine how this person, the communications director, would be speaking if it was President Biden or Vice President Harris or Tim Walz, Governor Walz, who had dinner with Nick Fuentes or Kanye West. Right? Would he be saying, well, it's okay, you're having, you know, dinner and conversations with non-traditional media representatives? No, of course not, right? What it comes down to at the end of the day is that conservatives grade Donald Trump on a curve. They're trying to have it both ways. They're trying to get you to completely ignore the nexus of anti-Semitism that's found within the Republican Party, particularly the Republican Party's leadership, Donald Trump, Marjorie Taylor Greene, and others. And instead, they want you to believe that this is an exclusive province of the Democratic Party, even though there's all evidence to the contrary. Mehdi Hasan also responded to Chris Cuomo, former CNN anchor, brother of Governor Andrew Cuomo of New York, formerly governor of New York. So Chris Cuomo says Mehdi is a great debater, but part of that is defining the issue to his advantage. Democrats are not anti-Semitic. Some far-left radicals are anti-Zionist and deferential to a terror organization called Hamas. If Shapiro, being Jewish, had no role, why wasn't he picked? To which Mehdi Hasan replied, The reporting from Politico and your old friends at CNN suggests he didn't gel with Harris, who didn't want the role she had for him, and Walz was the better fit. Happy to come on your show and explain it to you, but you seem to have already made up your mind and are pushing a dumb smear. Again, to whatever extent you want to say that there is some anti-Semitism in the Democratic Party, I accept that at face value. It's wrong, but again, this idea that the Democratic Party, which is comprised of tens of millions of Americans, hundreds of millions of Americans, completely devoid of anti-Semitism, nobody's claiming that. But instead, Republicans are saying that it's the driving animus of the Democratic Party, and it was the reason for which Governor Shapiro was not selected. Governor Shapiro, again, gave an excellent speech introducing Vice President Harris and Governor Walz at that rally. Why would he do that if their relationship was defined by anti-Semitism, or if even if there was a presence of anti-Semitism in that relationship? Do you think Governor Shapiro would tolerate that if the reason that Vice President Harris went with a different candidate was because she was somehow anti-Semitic? What about her marriage to Doug Emhoff, who is Jewish? Wouldn't that create tension there? There's no evidence whatsoever. It's just wild and inappropriate speculation. So while we're talking about Mehdi Hasan, because I love Mehdi Hasan, he also had some stellar moments in the past 24 hours. After Donald Trump released this unhinged screed on Truth Social, he says, "We make so much fun of Trump and his insane posts that we all just gloss over his open bigotry. He manages to be both Islamophobic by emphasizing the Hussein in terms of President Obama's middle name, and anti-Semitic, Shifty, referring to Adam Schiff, the Democratic congressman, at the same time, and we all just ignore it. There are no penalties for Trump from the so-called liberal media." He's right. There is a double standard, a wild asymmetry, which is inappropriate, irrational, and stupid. And then another great post from Mehdi Hasan, because people are whining that Governor Walz made a joke about a meme, a debunked story that J.D. Vance had sexual interrelationships or sectional relationships with a couch. Walz made a joke about that to that effect, hinting at that meme. And there are a lot of people clutching their pearls about it, getting very upset. Oh, how can you be so divisive, and how can you say such things? And Mehdi Hasan says, Republicans don't get to be frustrated. Their candidate lies and smears his opponents every day. And he is correct. Great performance, masterclass by Mehdi Hasan. Just, again, a recitation, a command of the facts, a fluid recitation of the facts, and then incisive questions, asking, okay, well, why was this famous anti-Semite in Donald Trump's home? Why did Donald Trump bring a famous anti-Semite to his home for dinner? Two of them, Kanye West and Nick Fuentes. And then, of course, when his opponent said, well, just non-traditional media, he was like, well, what does that mean? That person was an idiot. That person's an idiot, referring to Fuentes and Kanye. Does that mean Donald Trump is an idiot because he was the one who brought them? No. Donald Trump can't possibly be idiotic. It's just other people. Great performance by Mehdi Hasan. Would love to see more of that in mainstream, legacy, and even alternate media. But unfortunately, there's only one Mehdi Hasan. I hope one day he's able to bring James O'Brien of LBC, who's a British journalist who's very much like Mehdi in terms, again, very witty, just relentlessly incisive, and brings him over to the United States to cover U.S. politics. That'd be great. Let me know what you think in the comments.